No one in the galactic hegemony command chamber expected their finest invasion fleet to be shredded by marsupials. High Commander Zexel's iridescent crystalline skin pulsed a nervous amber green as he watched the holographic footage unfold before the United Earth Emergency Response Council. The VXXSC invasion force, the pride of their bioengineering division, equipped with armored quadrupeds and anti-personnel swarm drones, had been routed in minutes by kangaroos. And not just routed, humiliated. On the projection hovering in the middle of the room, a massive kangaroo bounced forward and delivered a precise, double-legged kick to a Phase 3 VXX mech unit. The 8-foot-tall alien war machine spun twice in the air before crumpling into a eucalyptus tree, whereupon a nearby koala promptly peed on it. The human seated beside Zexel was laughing quietly. Captain Sarah Chun, UEDF liaison officer and professional chaos interpreter, sipped her coffee as if watching a sports highlight reel. "I mean," she said, gesturing lazily to the footage, "if you're going to invade Earth, maybe don't start with Australia." Zexel turned slowly toward her, compound eyes glimmering in disbelief. "Our scans indicated it was the least defended landmass." "Exactly," Sarah replied with a wry grin. "That should have been your first red flag." The alien delegation murmured uneasily, their translators buzzing with cross-species confusion. Footage cut to another scene. This time a cassowary, that deceptively colorful flightless bird with the temperament of a territorial landmine, chasing 6 elite shock troopers through a rainforest. The alien troops opened fire, their plasma rifles screeching, but the cassowary zigzagged between beams, leapt 6 feet, and promptly dismantled the lead soldier's helmet with a talon swipe. Zexel's mouthparts twitched. "Our armor is rated against energy weapons. Did you rate it against a murder bird with velocity-based trauma rage?" Sarah asked sweetly. Admiral Jux of the insectoid delegation leaned forward, squinting at the display. "Is that a wombat pile driving one of our tanks?" "No, that's a drop bear," chimed in James Cooper, the Australian representative, who'd been grinning the entire time. "We try not to talk about those until the second or third invasion attempt. Gotta keep some surprises." "You mean those exist?" gasped Dr. Nix, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, her crystalline tendrils trembling. "Only in the shadows," James intoned ominously, "and in the nightmares of every invading species who thought uninhabited wilderness meant safe." Another switch of the holofeed. Western Australia. A dozen armored landing pods smoldered in ruins. A flock of emus strutted away victoriously. One paused to poop on a burning helmet. Sarah leaned in, voice low and smug. "You ever hear of the Great Emu War?" Zexel blinked. "You fought a war against birds and lost," James added proudly. "It's why we don't mess with them anymore." But the aliens didn't get the memo, did they? The chamber fell into a stunned silence. The hegemony's strongest forces, crushed not by coordinated resistance, not by tactical genius, but by creatures that Earth's own humans considered adorable. "Your species lives with these creatures?" Admiral Jux whispered. "We do more than live with them," Sarah said with a smirk. "We built fences around them. We take them on walks. We make cartoons about them." "I'm sorry," Zexel said weakly. You domesticated this planet." Sarah leaned back, kicked her boots up on the polished alien alloy table, and smiled. "Nah, we just adapted. Earth didn't kill us, so we got creative." Footage flashed again, a platypus using its venomous spur to jab an alien recon drone. Then a crocodile casually dragging a scout across a riverbank while a family of dingoes watched. Dr. Nix quietly updated her official Earth status from moderate threat to bio-nightmare death world. She didn't even blink when Sarah added, "We haven't even shown you Canada yet. Ever heard of goose migration?" A few aliens whimpered. "So," Sarah said cheerfully, tapping her data pad and sliding over a peace treaty, "with we tried in Comic Sans across the top. Do you want to discuss terms of surrender, or should I show you what happened to your underwater units near the great white shark nesting sites? Zexel sagged, his wings dull and limp. Surrender, please. Smart choice. Sarah clicked her pen. First term, Earth is off limits. Second term, your textbooks will now classify us as a Class 5 death world. Third term, you contribute to our Wildlife Preservation Fund. You break it, you buy it. What is a honey badger? Someone whispered. Sarah paused, then grinned like the predator Earth had shaped her into, oh, you'll find out. Captain Sarah Chun leaned back in her chair, sipping from a mug that read, Earth, the final nope. Around her, the Galactic Emergency Council remained in stunned silence, still processing the footage of a kangaroo executing a flawless spinning kick into the thorax of a VXXC exosuit. High Commander Zexel, a crystalline life form currently flickering in distressed shades of green, finally broke the silence. Captain Chun, would you care to explain that? Sarah swirled her coffee like a fine wine. That was just Gary. He lives near Perth. Got a mean left hook. Lost his last tournament to a wombat with a grudge. Gary is a combatant. Admiral Just of the Quadrix, Swarm, asked cautiously. No, Sarah replied, suppressing a smirk. Gary's just a roo. Likes to box. It's a hobby. You should see him when he's annoyed. A chorus of panicked chittering erupted across the chamber. Dr. Nix, the VXXSC's chief xenobiologist, muttered to herself while frantically adjusting her neural data net. This is not possible. They are non-sentient. We ran simulations. You didn't run them in Australia, Sarah replied coolly. First rule of Earth, never underestimate anything with fur, feathers, or more than 2 legs. High Chancellor Merca of the Verdant Accord hissed, You're telling me your planet's animals repelled a military incursion? Animals, yes. James Cooper, Earth's Australian ambassador, chimed in with a grin. Also plants. We lost 3 of your scouting pods to eucalyptus-induced hallucinations. The 4th wandered into a nest of fire ants. Haven't heard back since. Fire ants? They're like land piranhas, but with better organizational skills, Sarah added, and worse attitudes. A translucent diplomat from the Gelid Union slithered over to the edge of the Holotable. We thought Australia was the least populated, easiest to conquer. Sarah nodded. It is, because everything else died trying. The central screen flickered to new footage, a cassowary sprinting through a line of armored VXX infantry, leaving chaos and feathers in its wake. A Zarnathi envoy fainted on the spot. We've made a mistake, Zexel whispered. James leaned forward. Mate, you didn't just make a mistake. You landed in a continent that eats tactical predictions for breakfast. Or spits them out, Sarah said with a shrug. Depends on the animal. Zexel turned desperately to the treaty folder beside him. Then, perhaps we can renegotiate Earth's classification. Clearly, your biosphere warrants Death World level designation 4. 4. Sarah blinked, then handed over a data pad. Try 5. And that's us being humble. Have you met a honey badger? Several diplomats screamed. A new hologram lit the room. Their recon team's failed incursion in Canada halted by a flock of geese. Dozens of armored aliens fleeing in abject terror as the hissing birds descended like feathery war gods. They nested on the dropship, someone whispered. Sarah raised her mug again. Welcome to Earth. The footage flickered, and silence fell over the Galactic Emergency Council. All eyes turned to the display hovering in the center of the chamber. There, in crisp high definition, was the VXXA's elite ground unit, touted as unstoppable in every known war simulation, being outmaneuvered and trampled by birds. Not just any birds. Emus. High Commander Zexel's crystalline limbs tensed, his hue shifting from confused lavender to full-blown catastrophe violet. "Why are they running?" he asked, his voice thin, eyes wide. Captain Sarah Chen didn't even look up from her datapad. "Because they're smart," she said with a grin. "Smarter than your troops, apparently. You know about the Great Emu War, right?" Admiral just blinked. "You fought a war against your own birds." "Lost it, too," James Cooper added cheerfully from the back of the chamber. The Australian representative leaned casually against the wall, sipping a can of something carbonated. "Tried everything, bullets, tanks, even propaganda. They just kept coming. Birds with no mercy. And now, they remember." On screen, one of the VXX soldiers made the grave mistake of pointing a stun baton at a nearby emu. The bird cocked its head once, as if acknowledging the declaration of war, then exploded into action. With thunderous legs and pure avian rage, it knocked the trooper clean off his feet and pecked the energy weapon into sparks. Around it, dozens more joined, forming a chaotic, feathery vanguard of vengeance. Zexel clutched his head. "We trained our infantry for interdimensional psychological warfare, not prehistoric terrestrial avians." "They're not prehistoric," Sarah corrected. "They're just what happens when evolution gets bored and decides to make a feathered dinosaur with attitude." More footage played. Soldiers sprinting in panic across sand dunes, squawking in every translator dialect, as emus blocked every possible retreat. Strategic airlifts failed to retrieve anyone without attracting the attention of cassowaries circling below like ground-level interceptors. One of the delegates, a multi-eyed tactician from the Atari Coalition, squinted. "How are these things even coordinated? Are they telepathic?" "Nope," said James. "They just hate anything with authority." The room collectively winced as a VXX mech was taken down by a synchronized emu tackle. "I have a question," murmured Dr. Nix, the xenobiologist who had previously bragged about categorizing all Earth wildlife as non-threatening. Her voice trembled. "Have these creatures been domesticated, modified by human hands?" "Oh, heavens no," said Sarah. "These are just the wild ones. Untouched, unbothered, unapologetic." James leaned in. "We tried domesticating them once. They domesticated us instead." Across the room, alien generals began whispering urgent requests to retreat from terrestrial engagements. One unlucky council member vomited into a potted plant after watching a feathered ambush on their screen. 2 emus had cornered a command tent and were pecking through encrypted files like they were made of corn chips. Zexel groaned. "This can't be real. We invaded a death world where the birds lead insurgencies." Sarah tapped on her console. "Oh, that's not even the worst of it. We haven't shown you what happened when your drones ran a recon pass over New Zealand. Let's just say the Kiwis have cousins called Kias, and they like taking things apart." As the VXX Council collapsed into full diplomatic panic, James wandered over to a refreshment station and popped open another can. "So, now that we've covered Australia and its lovely hospitality," he said, raising his drink, "shall we move on to the drop bears?" Multiple alien delegates screamed. The Galactic Visitor Pavilion stood gleaming under the hazy Australian sun, carved directly into a quartz-blasted ridge overlooking what Earth scientists still politely referred to as mild terrain. To everyone else, it was a death trap with scenic views. Inside, the freshly minted Death World Tourism Board prepared to begin their first ever cross-species tour, an event that, according to several planetary insurance algorithms, had already been flagged as a historically poor decision. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the front of the viewing gallery, sipping her coffee with all the calm authority of someone who knew exactly what she was about to unleash. A holographic banner behind her read, "Earth, you won't survive the weekend, but you'll love the experience." A terrified silence settled over the room like frost on a cryochamber window. Alien diplomats shifted in their gravity cushions, some fidgeting with their translation nodes, others simply staring in wide-eyed dread at the domed window behind Sarah. Beyond the reinforced glass was a green pasture. Sheep grazed quietly. A collie darted back and forth with perfect precision, herding them with gentle commands from a farmer's distant whistle. On a nearby platform, several cats lounged on velvet cushions, looking bored and mildly judgmental. The room was silent except for the occasional baa and the soft sound of Sarah setting down her mug. She cleared her throat. "Welcome to the Earth Domestication Exhibit," she said with a smile so disarming that it only made the delegation more nervous. "Now, before you panic, again, I want to remind everyone that this zone has a 98% survival rating." A crystalline diplomat named Dr. Nix raised a trembling appendage. "You keep your apex predators in fields." "No," Sarah replied cheerfully. "Those are sheep." A moment of silence. "They look harmless," murmured a molluscoid ambassador, pressing his face to the glass. "Are they?" "Not particularly. That's the point." Sarah folded her arms. "We domesticated them, selectively bred them over generations until they were soft, gentle, and incapable of causing harm." Zexel, High Commander of the VXX forces and newly demoted chair of Intergalactic Culture Integration, blinked his crystalline eyes. "You deliberately bred out their defensive capabilities." "Exactly. And in return," Sarah said, turning toward the glass, "we feed them, protect them, and keep them warm. In other words, you assumed responsibility for their survival," Admiral just whispered, horror dawning on her insectoid face. Sarah smiled again. "Welcome to human domestication, the science of making things soft, while everything else on this planet is trying to kill us." At the edge of the field, a golden retriever chased a tennis ball with such blinding enthusiasm that several delegates flinched. It was unclear whether it was the speed, the open-mouthed grin, or the unhinged tail wagging that unsettled them. But it definitely unsettled them. "Wait," Dr. Nix stammered. "Those are the animals that live inside your homes." "Yep," said Sarah. "Dogs. Descended from wolves. Selectively bred to help hunt, guard, and cuddle. Very efficient. But they still have teeth," Admiral just pointed out, eyes locked on the retriever. "Oh yeah," Sarah said brightly. "And exceptional senses. Incredible smell. Fantastic trackers. We just redirected all that aggression into loyalty and playtime. Works beautifully, unless you're a tennis ball." A few delegates took visible notes. One gently whispered to another, they weaponized affection. A soft mechanical were cut through the room as a food drone hovered by, offering snacks to the guests. A tentacled ambassador hesitantly grabbed a beige tube. "What is this?" they asked. "A taquito," Sarah replied. The ambassador took one bite and immediately paused as their gelatinous form pulsed in stunned reverence. It's divine." "Thanks. We invented it in gas stations." Several dignitaries began quietly reevaluating everything they knew about human culinary evolution. As the group moved toward the next observation window, Sarah gestured grandly at the feline enclosure. Cats of all shapes and sizes dozed atop heat lamps, their tails flicking lazily. One opened an eye and locked onto the nearest alien with terrifying indifference. "This is Princess Murderbrights," Sarah said fondly. She once vaporized an ambassador's ego just by yawning. "She is majestic," someone whispered. "She is also contemplating interstellar conquest," Sarah added. The same someone took 3 steps back. By now, the alien delegates were visibly shaken. One was whispering prayers to a moss deity. Another was chewing nervously on the hem of their own robe. Zexel, whose last interaction with Earth's ecosystem involved being boxed by a kangaroo, raised his voice. "Captain Chun," he said, with the deepest respect, "why does any of this exist?" Sarah took a long sip from her coffee and leaned against the podium. because Earth never gave us the option of surviving alone. Everything on this planet has claws, fangs, venom, or the temperament of a caffeinated chainsaw. So we adapted. We tamed. We bred loyalty and utility into chaos. We didn't just survive Earth. We hired it. A silence swept through the room. Even the food drones seemed unsure what to do next. And now, Sarah continued, we're ready to share our world with the galaxy. You've tried to conquer us. You've tried to run from us. So maybe it's time to visit. A large banner unfurled behind her, shimmering with gentle animation. Earth, you haven't lived until you've almost died here. High Commander Zexel's eye twitched. And if we decline the tour? Sarah grinned. Then we'll see you next cycle when you try to invade again. And next time, we'll introduce you to the otters. Otters, a delegate asked. They hold hands while sleeping, Sarah said softly. And once stole a plasma grenade from a commando. The entire room fainted in perfect synchrony. Outside, in the peaceful pasture, a sheep watched the proceedings with a look of faint amusement and chewed its grass like a philosopher of alien ambition contemplating the fragility of. The educational tour had been going well by human standards. After barely surviving their encounter with sheep, several alien dignitaries requested a slightly less emotionally destabilizing exhibit. Captain Sarah Chun, always happy to oblige, led them into the next section of the Earth Cultural Preservation Dome. A large glowing sign hung overhead. Domesticated danger. Earth Pets 101. The moment the doors slid open, the delegation collectively froze. The habitat resembled a cozy Earth living room, oversized for alien comfort, with soft furniture, ambient lighting, and a fireplace simulation. But their eyes weren't on the decor. A golden retriever bounded toward them with its tongue out and tail wagging so violently it generated a light breeze. Several of the crystalline diplomats activated emergency defensive shielding. Stand down, Sarah said with a chuckle. That's Max. He's the greeting party. The dog skidded to a halt in front of the group, dropped a squeaky toy, and promptly rolled over for a belly rub. A few dignitaries took cautious steps back. One brave VXX scientist poked the dog, gently, with a glowing staff. Max responded by licking it. This creature is not attempting to assert dominance. Admiral Trex asked, his translucent wings jittering. Its scent markers are suggestive of apex predatory ancestry. Correct, Sarah grinned. Dogs descend from wolves. Pack hunters. Team players. Efficient killers. But we gave them snacks and belly rubs until they evolved into helpful loafs. A holographic display activated behind them showing a montage. Dogs tracking scents, leading the blind, comforting trauma survivors, chasing frisbees with cosmic zeal. They still have all the tools, teeth, muscles, speed. But now they use those tools to find avalanche victims or pull toddlers out of wells. Because we said good boy and meant it. The aliens stared at Max, who had now rolled over and begun snoring. Human logic is, Admiral Trex began, then gave up. Sarah didn't miss a beat. Oh, we're just getting started. The group moved on to the next enclosure. The lighting dimmed, calming music played. Atop a velvet cushion sat a feline, pure black with piercing yellow eyes, and an expression that implied it had paid taxes in multiple dimensions and found all of them beneath it. This, Sarah said with reverence, is Princess Murderbright's, a cat. The cat blinked once, slowly. She's watching us, whispered Ambassador 19 Tor, whose species did not technically have eyes. Oh yeah, Sarah said. Cats always know. Always. This is a creature we didn't so much tame as form a legal cohabitation agreement with. Is it safe? Another delegate asked as the cat stretched and extended claws the length of sewing needles. Sarah grinned. Absolutely not. They're solitary ambush predators who decided to tolerate humans for food, head scritches, and the occasional high-speed hallway sprint at 3 a.m. The next screen activated. Footage played of cats knocking things off shelves, stalking invisible prey, and leaping from improbable angles onto unsuspecting humans, all set to dramatic music. And yet, Sarah continued, we adore them. They're the queens of the domestic kingdom. Ancient Egypt worshipped them. Modern internet users post 10 billion videos per solar cycle about them. Is this entertainment or warning documentation? Admiral Trex asked. Yes, said Sarah. They passed smaller exhibits. One showed bearded dragons lounging under heat lamps wearing tiny hats. Another featured an otter named River who had learned to pick locks for treats. Several aliens shuddered when a hamster named Professor Chaos triggered a pulley system to drop a snack from a miniature tower. You gave dangerous mammals command over physics-based mechanisms, a horrified delegate asked. Only the smart ones, Sarah replied, sipping her coffee. The dumb ones usually just run in wheels. And humans let these creatures live among them? Someone whispered. Sarah's smile widened. Live among us. We let them in our beds. We put their faces on merchandise. We created entire industries around giving them gourmet food and birthday parties. Max, still following the group, barked once and retrieved a chew toy shaped like a meteor. Princess Murder Brights leapt onto a console, knocking a pen to the floor with slow disdain. And here's the kicker, Sarah added. They help us detect bombs, sense seizures, ease loneliness. They sit beside our wounded and sleep at the foot of our dying. You want to know why aliens can't understand humans? She gestured around the room. Because we took apex predators and gave them love instead of fear. And they became guardians, jesters, and family. Silence fell over the chamber. Even the translator, drones, hesitated. At last, one of the delegates said, I am no longer certain who is domesticating whom. Sarah winked. Now you're getting it. Just then, Princess Murder Brights jumped onto the ambassador's shoulder, curled up like royalty, and purred. The ambassador didn't move. They didn't even breathe. We'll send you home with a starter pet, Sarah said kindly. Maybe a cat or an otter. They love new friends. Behind them, River picked the lock on his enclosure again and escaped with a fish-shaped cookie. The aliens did not notice. They were still frozen as Princess Murder Brights adjusted her position and needed the ambassador's cloak. Domesticated danger, indeed. The Galactic Observation Dome, Level 17, Recreational Anthropology Wing, was unusually crowded. Alien dignitaries, generals, and biocultural analysts from across the stars packed the rows of floating seats, all hovering in anxious clusters as the holographic projector in the center activated with a soft chime. Welcome, said Captain Sarachan, her voice cool, calm, and brimming with the restrained amusement of someone who had been through this before. Today's topic, human recreation. Specifically, why they jump off things. A collective ripple of unease surged through the gathered crowd. Are these punitive acts? Asked Admiral Krelith, whose species only leapt as an expression of terminal despair. They leap from cliffs, plummet from skies, dive into storms. Surely this is societal execution? Nope, Sarah replied, clicking the remote with practiced flair. They call it fun. The dome darkened, and a panoramic 3D display exploded into life above them. A montage began, human bodies leaping from helicopters in wingsuits, others bungee jumping into canyons, skydiving over lightning-filled storm systems, cliff diving into narrow pools of water, narrowly missing rock spires by inches. Shrieks filled the room, but they weren't from the humans in the footage. They were from the spectators. Why would they do that? Cried an Uxery delegation member, clinging to her translation pod like it might save her from the concept of gravity. They have spacefaring ships. They can defy gravity with technology. Why revert to free fall? Adrenaline, James Cooper, Earth's semi-official cultural chaos interpreter, said helpfully, a biochemical rush. See, humans evolved to run from predators. Now that we've become the apex, we sort of simulate danger to keep our systems sharp. Like maintenance, but insane. Another hologram hovered above them now, displaying humans racing down snowy mountains, dodging trees on thin slivers of fiberglass. Skiing. Also fun. Does this not kill them? A diplomatic aide whispered, translucent with terror. Oh, sometimes, Sarah admitted, but that's just part of the risk. If it doesn't potentially result in injury, they don't consider it extreme. And they love extreme. The audience began to visibly panic. Many tried to recalibrate their translator pods, convinced this was a massive linguistic error. Sarah leaned in. You want truly baffling? Let's talk about parkour. The footage changed to grainy helmet cams showing humans vaulting over fences, backflipping off buildings, jumping between skyscrapers like gravity was a friendly suggestion. A Tharn admiral slumped in his seat, softly muttering, "They disrespect physics. They challenge logic," a Hydrexian general hissed. Actually, James chimed in cheerfully, many of them call it defying death artistically. It's about personal growth, style, and likes on social media. Someone in the back fainted. Sarah waved it off. You're wondering how a species that jumps out of planes for fun conquered space, right? A dozen appendages and bioluminescent limbs nodded. Because, she said, smiling, we were raised on a planet where everything wanted to kill us. Volcanoes, tigers, bacteria, seasonal allergies. Jumping off cliffs was just a more controlled experience. The hologram now cycled to a new scene. Children on trampolines. Human toddlers giggling as they were launched upward by giant rubbery surfaces. For fun, they trained their young in gravitational defiance, murmured a counselor, stunned. With laughter, another scene, playgrounds with monkey bars, jungle gyms, high slides. Oh, and this, Sarah pointed, is called a skate park. We build entire concrete playgrounds for humans to learn how to fall better. Falling is expected. What are the safety regulations? Someone asked, their voice trembling. Oh, helmets are optional. Optional. Another aide fled the room. Sarah turned serious. The real truth. Humans aren't reckless. Not exactly. We test limits. Constantly. We look at danger and ask, how close can I get before it kills me? Sometimes it's physics. Sometimes it's emotional risk. But it's always voluntary. And you celebrate this. Threx, the new chief intelligence officer from a species that panicked at uneven floor tiles, asked weakly. Yes, Sarah nodded. We cheer. We give medals. We live stream it in 4K. We upload highlight reels. Some humans build entire careers by jumping in creative ways. Monsters, someone whispered. No, she said. Adaptation, resilience, art even. The lights rose slightly. Sarah looked at the room with a kind, maddeningly calm smile. Tomorrow's session, why humans laugh at near-death experiences. I suggest you bring calming agents. As the dignitaries filed out in various stages of existential meltdown, James watched them go with a smirk. You didn't even show them base jumping with fireworks strapped to a unicycle. I'm saving that for the advanced seminar, Sarah replied. They need to survive today first. If the Galactic Observation Dome had been half full during the extreme sports lecture, today it was packed beyond regulation capacity. Every curious diplomat, cultural liaison, and deeply worried intelligence officer in the quadrant had shown up. This time, they brought translators, backup translators, emergency neurological recalibrators, and, curiously, hazmat suits. Captain Sarah Chun took the podium with a mug of something steaming and suspiciously fragrant. Welcome back, she said with far too much cheer. Today's lecture, Human Cuisine. or as your species documentation now classifies it, culinary hazard studies. Several dignitaries turned visibly pale. The central hologram flared to life, showing what appeared to be a simple earth dining table. It displayed bread, cheese, coffee, some meats, and something brown bubbling ominously in a cauldron. A soft warning beep issued from half the translator pods. "Let's begin with how we discovered what to eat," Sarah said, sipping her coffee. "In summary, we didn't know, so we just ate things." "You what?" asked Admiral ZYR, whose species determined edibility through 37 generations of genetic memory. "We saw berries and thought, maybe food, maybe poison. Let's find out." That's how we discovered strawberries and death mushrooms. Dr. Neer, a gelatinous scholar, slowly emitted stress bubbles. "This is your scientific method." "Empirical chaos," James added from the sidelines. "We still use it sometimes, especially on weekends." Sarah grinned. "Now let's talk dairy." The hologram changed to a cow. "This is a cow." We looked at it and said, "I bet we could drink whatever comes out of those." There was a wave of choking sounds. "You milked a quadruped?" Ambassador Ketz whispered, revolted. "Yep." Then we left it out in the sun until it rotted. We call the result cheese. And then we decided that if something smelled terrible and had mold growing on it, it was probably delicious. A delegate in the fourth row collapsed. The medics rolled them out like they'd planned for this. Sarah continued. "Fermentation. Another classic human move. We discovered if you let fruit rot just the right amount, it made you feel happy. That's called wine. We got so good at controlled decay, we turned it into an art form." The hologram now showed humans gleefully stomping grapes in wooden barrels. And if you thought we stopped there, oh no, we let cabbage rot and called it sauerkraut. We intentionally grew mold on rice to make sake. We turn barley into beer. And sometimes we leave fish to ferment in cans so aggressively they become pressurized chemical events. That's surströmming. Admiral ZYR looked ready to explode. "This is a cry for help." "Possibly," James nodded. "But we serve it with crackers." The next slide. A photo of fugu, a blowfish served raw. "Ah yes," Sarah said. "This is a delicacy in Japan, but it's lethal if prepared incorrectly." "Then why prepare it at all?" someone shrieked. "Because it's a challenge. It's culinary roulette. Humans pay a premium to experience almost dying while snacking." Dozens of alien species activated their bioshields, fearing psychological contamination. "But wait," Sarah said. "There's more." The display zoomed into the concept of spice. "This is capsaicin. It evolved to prevent mammals from eating chili peppers. So humans naturally started breeding stronger and stronger ones." A new graph appeared showing the Scoville scale, topped by the infamous Carolina Reaper. "Why would you eat this?" a three-eyed insectoid bellowed, visibly sweating. "Because it hurts so good," Sarah replied. "What?" "Spice pain is a flavor," James added. "If you're not crying, it's not properly seasoned." The next scene, human food challenges. People eating massive burgers, ghost pepper wings, wasabi mountains. "Sometimes," Sarah said, "we even compete to see who can endure the most pain. We call it lunch." "You weaponized dinner," whispered Ambassador Grax. "And breakfast," Sarah said, pointing to a clip of a man eating habanero-infused waffles. Several aliens requested diplomatic asylum in less chaotic star systems. "But what about sweets?" Admiral ZYR asked, clearly hoping for salvation. The display changed to deep-fried butter, candy that fizzes and explodes, and a 5,000-calorie milkshake topped with cake and bacon. "Oh," he whispered. "Oh, indeed," Sarah smiled. "We even deep-fry ice cream." There was a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. The final hologram appeared. A full human holiday feast. Thanksgiving. Stuffing, gravy, pumpkin pie, cranberry sauce, and a turkey the size of a hover bike. We invented a holiday entirely dedicated to overconsumption. We eat until it hurts, then nap, then eat again. The audience was silent, defeated. Their souls had been braised and sautéed. And the weirdest part, Sarah said softly, this isn't even a threat display. It's hospitality. We invite friends over and force feed them. Refusing food is an insult. They conquer through carbs, someone whispered in awe. Sarah nodded solemnly. You haven't truly experienced Earth until a grandma has emotionally blackmailed you into eating a fourth plate of pasta. The lights brightened. The lecture ended. Next week, Sarah said, we'll explore human medicine, or how we accidentally discovered antibiotics while trying to eat mold. As the aliens staggered out, drained and deeply disturbed, James looked over the half-eaten plate of ghost pepper tacos nearby. You think they'll survive the food festival next month? Only if they bring hazmat gear and emergency antacids. Sarah said, we haven't even shown them the pineapple pizza debate yet. Before we begin today's lecture on human medical history, Sarah Chin announced, her voice calm but carrying the weight of 1,000 regrets. I should mention our med team has deployed additional sedation fields, just in case. The alien dignitaries seated across the auditorium didn't so much nod as twitch nervously. Most had been part of yesterday's culinary disaster lecture, which had ended with 3 beings in emergency cocoon stasis and 1 ambassador trying to legally classify cheese as a weapon. High Commander Zexel, crystalline skin still spiderwebbed with stress fractures, buzzed softly. Is it true you once used leeches as medicine? Oh, Sarah replied with a straight face, we're going to get to the leeches. But let's start with something gentler. Modern surgery. A hologram snapped to life behind her, displaying a sterile, well-lit human operating room. Laser scalpels, nanothread sutures, painless recovery systems. The aliens exhaled in cautious relief. Finally, something that made sense. We reached this point, Sarah continued, after several thousand years of trial, error, and bone-deep stubbornness. Slide, please. The display changed. Gasps echoed around the hall. It showed a candle-lit room packed with humans in grimy coats, performing surgery on a patient surrounded by spectators, in balconies. Is that an audience? Admiral Eurus asked, voice fluttering with existential nausea. Operating theater, Sarah confirmed cheerfully. Early humans thought surgery should be educational, also occasionally ticketed. Where is the sterilization protocol? Dr. Nix demanded, flailing her appendages. We hadn't invented germ theory yet, Sarah replied, which, fun fact, was hotly debated. One doctor suggested hand washing and was ridiculed. A low moan rippled across the crowd. Half a dozen delegates activated emergency calm field protocols. An anesthesia? Zexel asked, weakly. Eventually, Sarah said, but first came, bite this stick and hope for the best. James, seated casually near the edge of the stage, added, we also tried alcohol, opium, or just passing out from pain. Very scientific. On the screen, the slide changed to a medieval herbalist toolkit. Animal bones, dried moss, mushrooms, a bottle marked, good for headaches, / maybe poison. We experimented a lot, Sarah said with a grin. Take willow bark, it became aspirin. Or, that time we discovered antibiotics from moldy bread. You weaponized spoiled bread, hissed a voice from the back. It saved millions of lives. Sarah replied brightly. Eventually, medical staff began circulating through the rows, distributing emergency neurocalmers. Several alien delegates were now rocking back and forth, whispering, they're still alive. How are they still alive? Now, Sarah continued, let's talk about trepanation. The hologram changed. It showed ancient humans using rocks to drill holes into skulls. Why? Demanded a diplomat who had not yet fled. For headaches. Or bad vibes. We're not sure. An ambassador shrieked and tried to teleport out of the building. The med team tackled them mid-flash. Modern medicine improved fast, Sarah said, because humans kept finding inventive ways to injure themselves. You invent skydiving, you better invent trauma surgery. Another slide. A hospital emergency wing labeled extreme sports intake. And your research ethics? Zexel wheezed. We had none for a while. James said, our early trials were mostly, what happens if I eat this? You ate your way to medical advancement. Eurus cried. Sometimes we drank our way there, Sarah said with a wink. Painkillers, disinfectants, antiseptics, all discovered by daring someone to chug something weird. One brave VXSE scientist raised a trembling claw. Do you still do any of this? Oh yes, Sarah beamed. Now with regulation and consent forms. But the core approach hasn't changed. The hologram shifted again, now showing a modern ER team calmly treating a man with a bear trap on his foot, a hockey stick lodged in his side, and a smile on his face. That guy, James noted, got injured trying to prove a snowmobile could clear a frozen lake. Spoiler, it couldn't. I don't understand, whispered Dr. Nix. How did you survive long enough to develop space travel? We didn't just survive, Sarah replied softly. We thrived, because human bodies evolved to adapt. Our minds evolved to innovate, and our culture evolved to laugh in the face of lethal stupidity. A quiet fell over the room. Rule number 5 of the galaxy, Sarah finished. If a species' medical history reads like a horror story, but they're still around, maybe don't fight them. Silence. Then Zexel raised a trembling wing. Are you going to teach us about dentistry next? Sarah grinned. Only if you're feeling brave. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Auditorium was unusually dim today, intentionally so. Mood lighting, Sarah Chen insisted, was essential for the immersion part of the presentation. The alien delegation sat uneasily in reclining ergonomic chairs, surrounded by holographic speakers and strange soft cushions labeled butt-rumbling base pods. Many had already activated their calming implants. Some had brought translators that now pulsed nervously with anticipation. Sarah took center stage. Behind her, a massive display projected the glowing words, "Entertainment, the human weapon of mass distraction." Welcome, she began with a bright grin. Today, we're diving into one of humanity's most potent cultural exports, entertainment. And before anyone panics, she gestured toward a tentacled diplomat adjusting their emergency sedative pack. This session is PG-13. Probably. A hologram snapped to life. It played a chaotic montage. Humans in strange costumes fighting with glowing swords. Massive explosions with people walking away slowly, unbothered. A man screaming, "This is Sparta," before kicking another into a pit. High Commander Zexel raised a trembling crystalline claw. "Is this combat training footage?" "Nope," Sarah beamed. "That's called cinema. It's pretend fighting. For fun." "For fun?" Admiral Rixel whispered as a hologram displayed a car launching off a cliff in slow motion while dramatic music swelled. "But the physics, they're all wrong." "Exactly." Sarah laughed. "It's not about being realistic. It's about being awesome." The next slide began rolling. A crowd of thousands in a stadium, screaming as two humans chased a ball and tackled each other into the mud, while others watched with tears and hot dogs. Another showed screaming fans at a concert, fainting as a singer with glittered pants screamed into a microphone. "These are called sports and concerts," Sarah explained, sipping her tea like it was totally normal. Basically, organized tribal chaos for entertainment and emotional bonding. A young insectoid in turn whispered into her translator. "The humans simulate war, then bond over it with snacks and matching hats. They are unstable." That was before Sarah introduced them to reality TV. The screen flashed again. A scene from Survivor, Desert Edition, appeared where humans were eating bugs and building shelters out of sticks for prize money. In the next frame, a woman screamed at a man while holding a rose. "This is love," she declared. "This is called reality TV," Sarah explained with the same tone you might use for explaining calculus to a squirrel. People voluntarily live together in a house filled with cameras and emotional traps for months. They vote each other off for drama. Ratings skyrocket. Millions watch. Zexel's wings began vibrating with what was either fear or indigestion. And these entertainment constructs, they influence your society. Oh, absolutely, Sarah nodded. They shape public opinion, fashion trends, political strategy, and, according to some studies, our collective moral compass. Another hologram lit up. It was a compilation of viral human videos. A child laughing maniacally with spaghetti on his head. A man riding a shopping cart off a garage roof into a pool. A cat playing a piano. This is the internet. It's the most powerful force in the galaxy. Does it serve a strategic purpose? Asked Ambassador Krex, who was now hiding behind a cushion. No. Well, sort of. It's mostly cats. But it has started revolutions. The final display made the entire delegation fall silent. A clip of people lining up at midnight, dressed as wizards and aliens to buy tickets to a movie they've already seen. Multiple times. This, Sarah said solemnly, is fandom. Fandom? Zexel asked. A type of cult. Basically, Sarah shrugged. But with merch. Behind her, James dimmed the lights further. One final slide appeared. A human child laughing hysterically at a cartoon involving an anvil falling on a coyote. You've seen our weapons, our ships, our chaos, Sarah concluded. But what truly terrifies civilizations is this: our ability to willingly expose ourselves to emotional destruction, suspense, jump scares, and musical numbers, all in one evening, and call it a good time. Silence. Finally, Zexel stood. He looked into the audience, crystalline eyes reflecting faint holographic glows of dancing minions and lightsaber battles. He spoke slowly. So what you're saying is, Earth weaponized feelings. Correct, Sarah said, proud. And catchy theme songs. We must never anger these people again, Admiral Rixel whispered. Oh, don't worry, Sarah smiled. You haven't even seen musicals yet. There are rules in the galaxy, ancient ones, negotiated through bloodshed and brokered by civilizations old enough to remember when plasma was just really hot gas. Don't interfere with time streams. Don't provoke quantum singularities. Don't colonize sentient planets. And above all, above every black hole treaty and cosmic code etched into the asteroid walls of history, don't poke the honey badger. The Galactic Council chamber was silent, save for the sound of several alien dignitaries nervously adjusting their breathing masks. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the center of the floor, calm, confident, and sipping from a thermos labeled 100% unbothered. Behind her, holographic projections shifted like warning dreams. A kangaroo drop-kicking a mech, a cassowary gutting a surveillance drone, a honey badger, small, vicious, and chewing its way through an armored alien rover while on fire. We warned you, Sarah said cheerfully. Earth's ecosystems are not just aggressive. They're creative. And you tried to invade during mating season. Rookie mistake. Admiral Zexel, once proud, now broken in spirit and biology, sat in a hoverchair beside High Commander Krivax, whose 6 eyes blinked slowly in unison. We had containment fields. Krivax muttered. We had tranquilizers. We had escape pods. You didn't have a plan for a badger that chased the escape pod, Sarah said, tapping a display. It showed the terrified alien pilot locked in a craft, while the honey badger hung on to the external hull through re-entry. See, the mistake you made was assuming it feared death. It doesn't. It's from Australia. That's just Tuesday. A nearby diplomat fainted. The projection flicked to another clip. Two Terran squirrels systematically sabotaging a VXX weapons outpost by chewing through key support cables with laser precision, and then flipping off the security cameras. Those weren't even trained, Sarah added. That was just boredom. Zexel raised a trembling claw. But why haven't you subdued them? Subdued them? Sarah blinked. Subdued? They're part of the defense system. A collective groan rose from the delegation. Somewhere, a crystalline ambassador muttered in fractal tones, "We picked the wrong planet." "You picked the worst planet," Sarah corrected with a grin. "Earth isn't defended by armies. It's defended by millions of years of natural selection, caffeine-fueled scientists, and creatures that don't know how to quit. And humans, we're just the ones crazy enough to live next to them and teach them tricks." Another clip played. A human child riding a grizzly bear while holding a flag that read, "Welcome invaders." The bear wore sunglasses. The child wore glitter. "By the way," Sarah added, "we call this our final deterrent protocol. Unofficially, it's known as the honey badger doctrine." Krivax leaned forward. "And what is the doctrine?" "Simple." She raised one eyebrow. "If your invasion fails because of our military, that's unfortunate. If it fails because of our wildlife, well, that's hilarious. But if it fails because you pissed off something we barely contain out of sheer respect, you don't get a second chance." She flicked to the last slide. The words filled the air like a death sentence wrapped in glitter. "Do not poke the honey badger." There was no discussion. The council signed. Treaties were finalized. Compensation for the ruined mechs was paid. In honey, as the chamber emptied, Captain Sarah Chun packed up her thermos and tablet. Behind her, the honey badger sat in a hovering observation bubble, staring directly at a Terran-labeled crate marked, "Do not disturb, contains rage." The honey badger licked its chops, and the galaxy finally understood. This wasn't Earth's greatest defense. This was Earth's final warning.